Welcome to Vanguard, where humans aren't the underdogs. We're the endgame. Enjoy the journey. Scout Commander Xylot had spent 3 centuries mapping the cold silence between stars, and in all that time he had come to believe the galaxy held no more surprises for him. He had charted nebulae that breathed ion storms like living beasts, documented crystalline organisms drifting across vacuum, and encountered young civilizations still struggling to uncover fire. Experience had hardened him, protocol shaped him, and above all, the Imperium's doctrine of perfect efficiency defined his every instinct. Ships were tools, crew were components, variance was a flaw, disorder was a danger. The galaxy, in his mind, was a grand machine, and the Imperium had perfected its design. So when his scout vessel drifted along the quiet edge of the Orion Spur, a region logged as unremarkable for thousands of years, he expected nothing more eventful than cataloging dust clouds and checking gravimetric drift. Records from 3,000 years ago listed only one intelligent species in this sector: humans, primitive tool users. Projected advancement plus 10,000 years for spaceflight. The old reports were so definitive that no one had bothered to revisit the classification. That was why, when the first beep struck his ears, Xylot didn't react. His mind automatically assumed a sensor error. When the beep escalated into a persistent alarm, he frowned mildly. When the reading stabilized and the computer confirmed an artificial energy signature, not Imperial and not from any known civilization, Xylot froze. For the first time in decades, he felt something he considered obsolete: curiosity. He zoomed the display. A vessel emerged, a silhouette that broke every rule of known engineering. At first, he thought the data was misaligned. One side of the ship was bulkier, with plating that did not match the other. The hull was covered in lines, shapes, symbols, some geometric, others chaotic curves as if painted by hand. Panels were inconsistent, heat signatures irregular. Protrusions existed where no function could be justified. It looked incomplete, illogical, asymmetrical. It looked wrong. Xylot's fingers danced across the console as he ran the ship through every comparative database he had. The computer stalled, processed, stalled again. Then it produced an answer he found personally insulting: unknown species, unknown class, unknown structure, probable malfunction. He opened a communication channel, expecting static or nonsense. Instead, his translator unit chirped, reorganized linguistic markers, searched for contextual parallels, and locked onto a pattern. A voice answered, warm, human, confident. This is the UNSS Endeavour of the United Nations Space Service. We come in peace. Xylot stared at the console. The name United Nations flickered through old archives like an echo. Humans, the primitive beings who once hammered metal into crude blades. The species who supposedly required 10 millennia before they could even leave their atmosphere. Impossible. Yet the voice was unmistakably intelligent, civilized, fully linguistic. He introduced himself with the formality drilled into him over centuries. I am Scout Commander Xylot of the Galactic Imperium. Your species was not expected to achieve space travel for many thousands of years. How did you build a faster-than-light drive? The human captain laughed, not out of arrogance, but with a kind of relaxed honesty that felt completely out of place between stars. We worked hard. Took us a while, but we got there. Would you like to come aboard and talk? Xylot's training kicked in instantly. Standard first contact protocol required boarding the alien vessel, scanning its technology, evaluating potential threat levels. His voice was firm when he requested permission to dock. Then something unprecedented happened. The human hesitated. That might be a bit awkward, the captain admitted. Our interior design choices are very human. It might be culturally confusing. Maybe we should meet at a neutral station. The moment felt like a glitch in reality. No species refused inspection. No species worried their ship interiors might be confusing. There was no room for confusion in starship design, only purpose, only efficiency. Despite a rising pulse he had not felt in decades, Xylot agreed to the neutral meeting. But before departing, he performed detailed scans of the Endeavor. If the Imperium had missed something in their ancient report, he would not be the one to repeat that failure. His ship relayed the full data package to headquarters before he left orbit. 3 days later, Xylot stood inside a conference chamber with 5 of the Imperium's highest-ranking military minds. A hologram of the human ship rotated in front of them, flickering with annotated Imperium notes. Every officer stared with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "This makes no sense," Admiral Cretan growled. The elder war designer leaned heavily on his staff. "Look at the hull. It is not symmetrical. The weight distribution violates every stability model we know." Xylot stepped forward, his voice even. "The markings are decorations. The humans call them art. They paint their ships." Silence dropped like gravity failure. The Imperium did not paint ships. No species in the Imperium painted ships. Ships were tools. You did not decorate a tool. Master Engineer Vorath examined the aft section. His brow creased. "This area contains living plants. The scans show soil, water cycles, artificial sunlight. This is not storage. This is cultivation." A Krellian commander scoffed. "Food stores. Primitive species often—" "No," Vorath interrupted sharply. "The plants are growing. This is a garden." Xylot pointed to another section. "This is a recreational facility. The humans confirm the crew uses it to exercise and play games." "Games?" Admiral Cretan echoed, horrified. "On a ship designed for deep space?" Xylot nodded. "They also have a mess hall, far larger than our entire crew quarter section. It is used for socialization." Cretan's expression twisted. "Wasteful, illogical, unfathomably inefficient." Vorath tapped his datapad. "My analysis shows the Endeavor is 34% less mechanically efficient than optimal Imperium standards." That figure should have ended the discussion. Instead, Xylot felt the faint, persistent tug of doubt. He remembered the human captain, her ease, her awareness, the spark in her eyes. He remembered the crew he had glimpsed through the viewport, alert, content, vibrant. Imperium crews were efficient. They were not vibrant. "Sir," he said slowly, "perhaps we should study why they design ships this way." "There is nothing to learn," Admiral Cretan snapped. "Efficiency is efficiency. We perfected starship design 50,000 years ago. Humans simply lack the understanding required to do so." The meeting dismissed him, but Xylot lingered. The hologram of the Endeavor kept spinning, its mismatched plating catching simulated light, its painted markings swirling like living symbols. Something about the design bothered him, not because it was flawed, but because it worked in a way he could not quantify. He felt it in his bones. The Imperium had missed something. Something vital. Something humanity had remembered, and that the Imperium had long, long forgotten. 3 months after Xylot's first encounter, the Galactic Imperium extended a formal invitation to humanity, a request for cultural exchange and technological demonstration. The expectation was simple. A primitive species would present a handful of crude, unrefined vessels, nothing more than curiosities. At most, something to humor. No one expected 12 ships to answer the call. When the human fleet broke out of faster-than-light transit above the Imperial hosting station, every sensor, every analysis array, every defense satellite locked onto them out of instinct. And then, every observer went silent. 12 ships. 12 completely different silhouettes. 12 contradictions of everything the Imperium believed about engineering. The first vessel resembled a predatory sea creature from Earth's oceans. Angular fins, curved hull, the silhouette unmistakably evocative of a shark. Its hull shimmered with gradients of silver and cobalt, as though painted by hand. The ship beside it was the opposite, long, elegant, covered in panoramic windows that bathed the void with warm golden light. A third vessel burst with colors, reds, greens, blues, human lettering sprawling across the plating in expressive chaotic patterns. But it was the largest ship that stunned the delegation into disbelief. The UNSS Indomitable. Nearly the size of an imperial dreadnought, she emerged from FTL like a thunderclap. Mismatched armor plates from dozens of battles, scratches left intentionally unpolished, a massive illustration of a human woman on the nose, smiling mischievously at the stars. Below her image, in bold red letters 10 meters tall, was the name, Death's Mistress. The ambassadors of the Krellian Empire burst into mocking laughter. The Venturi delegation whispered among themselves in dismay. Several Imperium officers exchanged looks of embarrassment, as though witnessing a diplomatic humiliation in real time. Admiral Cretin himself stood on the observation platform, jaw tightening at each new detail. "This is what they bring?" he muttered. "A fleet that looks as though each ship was designed by a different species?" Master Engineer Vorath answered without looking away from the screens. "In a sense, Admiral, they were." The High Command assembled within the Grand Hall of the Imperial Analysis Deck, holograms of the human fleet spinning above them. The room buzzed with confusion and indignation. Variance was failure. Asymmetry was a sin. A fleet was supposed to move like a single organism, not a chaotic collection of clashing philosophies. Vorath began presenting his findings. Each human vessel uses a different hull geometry, different weapon placements, different internal layouts. Their structural stress patterns do not align with any known evolutionary engineering process. A young officer, Telex, raised her hand. "Sir, according to the ancient records, all civilizations develop many designs early on, but after discovering the optimal configuration, they converge. Symmetry, efficiency, minimalism. Every documented species follows the pattern." "Exactly," Vorath said. "Physics guides design. The universe rewards efficiency. Yet the humans have not converged. They appear to have diverged further." Admiral Cretin grumbled. "Meaning?" "Meaning," Vorath said. "They prioritize something else." He gestured, and the holograms shifted to internal scans of the Indomitable. What appeared next left even the most hardened Imperium officers speechless. A gym with rows of exercise equipment, a vast library filled with physical books, a cafeteria, mess hall, large enough for 200 people, with long wooden tables arranged for communal gatherings, a lounge lined with soft seating facing windowed walls that opened into star-scattered darkness. "This is their observation lounge," Vorath explained. "Crew members gathered to look at the stars for relaxation." "Relaxation?" the Krellian Commander Shark spat. "On a warship?" Xylot stepped forward. "Yes, on a warship." Telex studied the scans closely, her eyes widening. "Sir, humans are designing their ships around their crew instead of their machinery." The room erupted with immediate protest. "That is primitive. No species can afford to waste this much internal volume. Crew members are trained to endure discomfort. This violates every principle of Starship doctrine." Xylot's voice cut through the noise, calm but unusually firm. "I met their captain. Their crew was confident, relaxed, and alert. I have never seen such morale on an Imperial vessel." Cretin scoffed. "Morale is irrelevant. Performance is what matters." Xylot held his gaze. "Perhaps morale is performance." For a moment, the entire hall froze. The Admiral dismissed Xylot's remark, but the seed had been planted. Later that day, the human ships docked at the diplomatic platform, and Commander Sarah Chen disembarked from the Indomitable. She walked with a blend of military precision and approachable warmth that felt disorienting to the Imperium delegates. Her smile was confident, not deferential. Her posture conveyed respect without subservience. She answered questions with clarity and humor, a trait rarely seen in interstellar politics. During the reception, Krellian Ambassador Thiel asked, unable to restrain his disdain, "Commander Chen, I must inquire, Why is your ship such a mess? Mismatched plating? Paint? Irregular structure? Surely your people possess more refined vessels. Chen's smile never faltered. The Indomitable is one of our finest. She has survived 37 deep space missions. Every plate you see was chosen by her crew, not replaced, not polished, chosen. But why? Thiel demanded. Chen touched a projection of her ship, fingers brushing the painted pinup. Because ships are more than machines. They are memories. The red plating is from the Battle of Titan. That scar along the port wing, we kept it because it saved the lives of 18 people. Every panel, every mark, it's a reminder of where we've been and who we brought home. The room fell still, caught off guard by the weight in her words. Imperial tradition, Cretin said stiffly, states that scars, mismatched plating, and decorative markings reduce mechanical efficiency. Chen nodded. I'm aware, but perhaps efficiency isn't measured only in kilowatts and structural percentages. Perhaps it's measured in something else too. And what would that be? Sharks asked mockingly. Human resilience, Chen answered. Morale, creativity, community. The Krellian delegation scoffed openly. The Imperium officers looked away, uncomfortable. But Xylot watched her closely, seeing in her expression the same quiet truth he sensed the day he first scanned the Endeavor. These ships were not inefficient. They were different. After the reception, a private meeting was held within the high analysis chamber. A rotating 3D model of the Indomitable hung above the table, casting chaotic reflections across the room. Cretin stood before the hologram, gesturing dismissively. This is not a military threat. Any species that wastes this much space on books and art cannot hope to challenge the Imperium. Telex frowned. Sir, it may not be about challenge. It may be about survival. Vorath adjusted his datapad. By removing these non-essential systems, humanity could increase their ship's efficiency by 42%. That settles it, Cretin said. They are a minor species with flawed design philosophy. We will teach them how proper ships are built. But Xylot remained still, staring into the hologram as if the answers lay buried within those mismatched plates. For the first time in his long life, he felt the Imperium's certainty cracking. Something about these human vessels, chaotic, expressive, alive, challenged the very foundation of their doctrine. He could not yet explain it, but he sensed it with clarity deeper than logic. Humanity had rediscovered something ancient, something the Imperium had abandoned millennia ago. They didn't build perfect machines, they built homes. And Xylot feared the galaxy was not ready for what that meant. The Grand Exhibition was the greatest ceremonial gathering in known space. Once every century, the most technologically advanced civilizations displayed their finest vessels, a demonstration of progress, power, and engineering orthodoxy. For 50,000 years, the Galactic Imperium dominated the event so thoroughly that most species no longer competed. The Imperium's ships had become the gold standard, the benchmark against which all others were measured. Perfect symmetry, perfect efficiency, perfect predictability. But that year, as the exhibition platform orbited the Imperium's home star, an undercurrent of curiosity flowed through the ambassadors and military strategists. Rumors of human ships, decorated, asymmetrical, chaotic, had spread through diplomatic channels like wildfire. Many expected a spectacle. Others expected a disappointment. None expected what was about to occur. When the UNSS Indomitable arrived, every scanner pivoted toward it as though pulled by gravity itself. The ship did not gleam like Imperial vessels. It seemed weathered, alive, its hull marked by history instead of polish. Some plates reflected the sun like shards of old armor. Others were matte, scorched, bearing the faint scars of battles long past. The painted figure of Death's mistress smirked at the universe with a defiant charm that unsettled even the most disciplined observers. Inside the Grand Hall, Commander Sarah Chen stepped forward, as though entirely at ease beneath the scrutinizing gazes of 100 civilizations. Her confidence had texture, a lived certainty, not arrogance. When she spoke, it was with a calm strength that spread through the room like ripples across water. "Thank you for welcoming humanity to the grand exhibition," she began. "We are honored to stand among such esteemed civilizations." Her sincerity disarmed several ambassadors who had prepared cutting remarks. Even Cretin, who had expected to feel nothing but disdain, found himself listening intently, if only to identify weaknesses. Ambassador Theo of the Krellian Empire broke the calm. "Commander Chen," he said with thinly veiled ridicule, "why would humanity present such a poorly optimized ship? Surely you must possess a vessel more appropriate for a galaxy-wide exhibition." Chen turned toward him with a smile that made her composure even more disarming. "I assure you, Ambassador, the Indomitable is among our finest. 12 years of service, 37 deep space missions. Every plate on her hull carries meaning. Every modification, every decoration reflects the crew who call her home." "Home?" Theo repeated, incredulous. "A ship is a machine." Chen's expression softened, not with pity, but with understanding. "For us, Ambassador, a ship is where we live for months or years at a time. We don't see the void as something to be endured. We see it as a frontier to grow through." Cretin stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Your designs are charming, Commander, but they lack mechanical efficiency. Imperium engineers estimate a 34% loss due to your crew comfort features. Perhaps humanity could benefit from our guidance." Chen nodded, as if considering the offer sincerely. "Efficiency is a worthy pursuit, but perhaps the concept is broader than you believe. Would the Imperium be willing to test its definition of efficiency against ours?" A murmur rippled through the hall. "A test?" Cretin's voice held skepticism. "What sort of test?" "A direct comparison. Your finest ship versus mine. Maneuver trials, emergency drills, combat simulations, identical parameters, identical goals." Cretin raised an eyebrow. "You're proposing a challenge." "A friendly one," Chen replied. "For science." The Krellian ambassador barked laughter. "Then let the Fang of Dominance be your opponent. This will be educational." The next day, the test began. Two vessels, the sleek, symmetrical Krellian masterpiece and the human-built Indomitable, aligned at the edge of the testing range. Thousands watched through holographic feeds across the exhibition platform. The Imperium expected a swift confirmation of their doctrine. Humans expected nothing. They merely prepared. The first trial required both ships to perform rapid directional changes in evasive maneuvers. The Fang executed every turn with flawless precision. Its engines fired at mathematically perfect intervals. Its crew followed doctrine with mechanical obedience. The Indomitable moved differently. Not elegant, not symmetrical, but fast, faster than projections allowed. The human ship leaned into maneuvers in unexpected ways, its crew improvising micro-course corrections with intuition derived from thousands of hours of lived experience. Vorath frowned at the data. Their precision is lower, but their response time is 15% faster. "That's impossible," Cretin muttered. "Their ship is less efficient." Xylot, standing beside him, replied quietly, "It seems their crew compensates for inefficiency." The emergency restart trial followed. The Fang initiated its protocol flawlessly, completing it exactly as calculated by Krellian engineering algorithms. The Indomitable initiated the same protocol, but midway through, a simulated system failed. Instead of halting the procedure, the human crew rerouted power through an unconventional pathway not listed in any technical manual. It worked, even better than the standard method. Xylot's eyes widened. They improvised. Cretin's, but where the Fang achieved predictable excellence, the Indomitable achieved transcendent adaptability. Where the Fang performed as designed, the human ship performed beyond design. During the rest period between trials, the Krellian crew returned to their cabins, small, sterile cells designed purely to restore physical function. The human crew dispersed into their vibrant communal spaces. Some exercised, some ate meals together, some lounged by the windows and watched the simulated nebula drift. Laughter echoed through the mess hall. Music played softly from a crew member's personal device. Sharks stared at the footage, baffled. They are wasting rest time. Xylot shook his head. They are resting. The Krellian crew emerged for the final combat scenario, stiff and tense. Their minds sharpened artificially by doctrine, but dulled by long-term stress. The human crew emerged energized, still tired but whole, connected, alive. The simulation began. A multi-threat battlefield unfolded across the range. Mock enemy vessels, failing systems, disorienting sensor jamming, dynamic hazards. The Fang handled the first hour perfectly. Then tiny cracks appeared, small errors, imperceptible hesitations. Stress accumulated. The Indomitable surged forward with confidence. When systems failed, improvisation solved them. When fire control overloaded, the weapons officer manually recalibrated targeting from memory. When a simulated hull breach occurred, 2 crew members rerouted air pressure through a trick they learned on a long-haul voyage. Vorath whispered, awestruck, "They're outperforming their design. Their ship is less efficient, but their people are more efficient." By the end of the simulation, the Indomitable had surpassed the Fang in every category. When the results appeared, humans win. Silence washed over the exhibition hall like a tidal wave. Ambassador Thiel's jaw clenched. Cretin stared, unable to reconcile decades of doctrine with a single, devastating truth. Commander Chen bowed her head gracefully. "Thank you for the exercise." The test was over, but the shockwave had just begun. Throughout the exhibition, whispers spread, first among engineers, then among captains, then among civilians. The idea was terrifying, exhilarating, unthinkable. Humans had achieved superiority not through machines, but through the people inside them. Xylot watched the crowd unravel with quiet clarity. The Imperium wasn't just wrong about human ships. They had been wrong about themselves for millennia. The galaxy's greatest flaw was not mechanical. It was philosophical, and humanity had just exposed it to the stars. News of humanity's victory did not merely travel. It detonated. Within days, every major hypernet forum, military academy, engineering guild, and diplomatic council across the galaxy erupted into debate. The results of the grand exhibition shattered doctrines older than many civilizations themselves. What began as curiosity became controversy. What began as skepticism became fascination. For the first time in tens of thousands of years, the galaxy's greatest empires were forced to confront a forbidden question. What if efficiency was not the pinnacle of design? What if the Imperium had optimized for the wrong things? Among the many who pondered this question, one young engineer in the Venturi coalition felt it deeper than anyone else. Ryux was brilliant, too brilliant, his elders often complained. Though barely 60 years old, he had already earned a position aboard the cruiser Eternal Silence. The vessel was an engineering marvel, symmetrical, polished, and so perfectly optimized that every crew member knew its corridors by heart, not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. Every hallway was identical. Every room was identical. Every decision predetermined by doctrine. Ryux had once admired this perfection. Now he felt suffocated by it. He watched the exhibition replay incessantly, studying how human crews moved through their ships with ease and laughter instead of rigid discipline. He listened to Commander Chen's calm explanations about homes, communities, memories. He replayed the final battle simulation, pausing every time a human crew member improvised in ways the Imperium deemed impossible. Late one night, alone in his quarters, white walls, white lighting, white furniture, Ryux felt a heaviness in his chest. Not pain, emptiness. Humans would never tolerate this. They would turn this sterile box into something alive. And so he made a decision that would ripple across the galaxy. He opened the ship's modification request database, a system so tightly controlled that most crew never dared use it, and submitted a proposal that was, by all logical metrics, absurd. Convert one unused storage room into an observation lounge. Install a large viewing window. Place comfortable chairs inside. A single sentence at the end nearly got him expelled from service. Purpose: for psychological rejuvenation. His captain rejected the request within minutes. Inefficient, waste of resources, no operational benefit. But Ryux did not give up. He compiled documented performance differences between the Indomitable and the Fang. He included stress level readings, reaction time variances, human crew improvisation metrics, and the 15% energy retention rate human crews maintain during long trials. Then he resubmitted the request. The captain rejected it again. He resubmitted with even more data. Again and again. After 3 months of relentless persistence, and perhaps because the captain grew tired of denying him, Ryux's proposal was approved on a trial basis. Ryux worked through the night. He installed the large glass pane, an indulgent design choice for any Venturi ship, and placed 6 soft chairs inside the room, each angled toward the stars. He adjusted the lighting to a dim, warm glow, something he had only seen on human broadcasts. When he finished, he told no one except 2 friends. The next day, the entire ship knew. Word spread faster than he anticipated. Crew members gravitated to the room like pilgrims discovering a holy site. They stepped inside cautiously at first, as though afraid they were violating protocol. But when they stared at the tranquil expanse of stars framed by soft lighting, something inside them shifted. They talked, quietly at first, then freely, about their homes, their worries, their dreams. Things Venturi crew members were never supposed to share. The atmosphere of the ship changed. Within a week, reaction times improved by 8%. Crew errors decreased. Efficiency increased paradoxically for the first time in the ship's 12 years of service. Ryuk was summoned to the captain's office. She glared at him with a mixture of irritation and awe. Explain this. Ryuk simply handed her the performance reports. For a long moment, the captain said nothing. Then, finally, leave it open. The change on Eternal Silence was only the beginning. Whispers of Ryuk's experiment traveled throughout the Venturi coalition, igniting a quiet revolution. A frigate captain added a small indoor garden. A destroyer commander allowed limited decorative customization for personal quarters. A supply vessel converted an unused storage bay into a communal dining hall. Every experiment produced the same outcome. Morale improved. Focus improved. Ingenuity improved. Performance soared. The Galactic Imperium took notice, and not in a positive way. Admiral Cretin convened an emergency war council, slamming reports onto the holotable. This is dangerous. Officers across multiple civilizations are abandoning proven designs in favor of human sentimentality. Sentimentality may not be the right word, Admiral Xyloth, recently promoted, said calmly. It may be wisdom. Cretin scoffed. We have perfected ship design for 200,000 years. Xyloth did not raise his voice. Then why did humans outperform us? The council erupted into argument. Some insisted humanity's results were anomalies. Others feared a galaxy-wide collapse of discipline. A few, quietly but boldly, suggested the Imperium investigate human philosophy more deeply. That suggestion changed everything. Under immense pressure from younger officers, civilian scientists, and external scrutiny, the Imperium Science Council launched an official, classified study into human ship design. Master Engineer Vorath was appointed to lead it. His initial skepticism vanished rapidly. Vorath spent 6 months aboard human vessels, traveling with crews on short and mid-range missions. He interviewed captains, engineers, chefs, medics, botanists. Yes, human ships had botanists. He studied sleep patterns, command structures, social rituals, even recreational habits. When he returned to the Imperium, he looked like a man who had glimpsed something profound. His final report shook the Science Council to its core. Human ship design, Vorath began, is not inefficient. It is optimized for a different metric, a metric we have ignored for millennia. The Council leaned forward as he activated holograms of ancient human generational ships. Vast vessels containing gardens, schools, parks, neighborhoods, flying ecosystems, homes. For 3,000 years, Vorath continued, before developing FTL travel, humans lived on ships traveling at sublight speeds. Months, years, decades. Generations born and raised on board. He zoomed in on the interior layouts. They were not military constructs. They were cultures in motion. When faster engines emerged, humans did not abandon this philosophy. They distilled it. Modern human ships are not designed for machines. They are designed for the people operating them. Another scientist, Thera, a military psychologist, stepped forward. Our crews operate at an average stress level of 73%. Human crews operate at 42%. Their morale structures, social cohesion, and emotional resilience are embedded into their ship architecture. But our crews are trained for stress, an elder counselor argued. Yes, Thera said gently, but they perform better without it. Vorath displayed side-by-side performance charts, stress charts, behavioral studies, and efficiency predictions. Everything converged on a single truth. Humans had redefined efficiency itself. The Science Council immediately classified the report. If this information spread, it would cause mutiny, societal upheaval, industrial revolution. Too much, too fast. But the report leaked. Within weeks, crew members throughout the Imperium devoured it, hungrily, desperately. Officers read it with widening eyes. Civilians circulated excerpts. Engineers debated openly. The fleet's younger generation embraced the revelation. Cool machines didn't matter if the people inside them were breaking. For the first time in millennia, the Imperium saw cracks in its perfect system. Cracks shaped like human fingerprints. Admiral Zyloff sat alone in his office as thousands of messages, demands, and inquiries flooded military channels. Across the Imperium, crews requested changes. Lounges, gardens, social spaces, larger quarters, recreation rooms. They didn't want better ships. They wanted human ships. Zyloff opened a communication channel to Commander Sarah Chen. When her face appeared, calm and warm as ever, he asked the question he had carried for months. How did your species discover this philosophy? How did you know ships should be built this way? Chen smiled softly. We didn't discover it, Admiral. We lived it. Our early ships were slow, painfully slow. If we didn't create communities aboard them, we would have gone mad long before reaching the stars. She paused, her eyes reflecting memories older than the Imperium realized. We never forgot that space isn't conquered by machines, she said. It's crossed by people. Zyloff ended the call and sat in silence, absorbing her words. For the first time, he understood. The Imperium had mastered engineering. Humans had mastered humanity. And in the depths of space, that made all the difference. Fleetmaster Gornath had never lost a battle. His record stretched across 150 years, from the Scarion border wars to the siege of Helios Rift. He was the Imperium's ideal officer, unyielding, disciplined, a product of doctrine so thoroughly embedded into his mind that he did not question its foundations. To him, ship design was not a conversation. It was a law of nature. So when younger officers began whispering about human methods, he scoffed. When Vorath's report leaked, he called it sentimental propaganda. When Admiral Zyloff suggested integrating human-style crew spaces into future ships, Gornath refused outright. Efficiency has won every war in Imperial history, he declared. We will not compromise it because one species paints pictures on their home. But the pressure did not subside. It mounted, internally, politically, culturally. Across the fleet, officers began debating whether the Imperium had missed something essential. The High Command needed answers, definitive answers, and so they proposed a solution, a controlled 3-day combat simulation between the Imperium's finest battleship, the Imperial Fist, and a human vessel of comparable class. Gornath accepted instantly. He wanted to end the debate once and for all. The humans sent the UNSS Defiant. Gornath looked at the Defiant on his tactical screen and nearly laughed. It was smaller than the Imperial Fist, though heavily armed. Its hull displayed scenes of Earth's oceans, vibrant blues and drifting coral designs, as though the ship carried an entire ecosystem in paint. Along its spine glimmered a greenhouse protected by transparent alloy, rows of plants visible even from kilometers away. Across the hull, in large, flowing script, were the words, "Home is where the ship is." Gornath muttered, "Ridiculous." But something unsettled him. Not the art, not the plants, not the unorthodox design. It was the human crew. He watched them through transmitted interior feeds, their movements relaxed, smiles genuine, voices light, as though preparing for a festival rather than a military trial. "My crew will break them in 6 hours," Gornath told his officers. "Prepare for standard protocol." The rules were simple. 3 days of continuous combat simulations. No real weapons, everything calculated through combat algorithms. No external interference. Day 1 began with the thunderous launch of both ships from opposing ends of the range. The Imperial Fist moved with flawless synchrony. Every officer responded with machine-like precision. Commands executed instantly. Systems performed at peak efficiency. Gornath watched with satisfaction. The Defiant moved differently, deliberately, almost playfully. Its maneuvers were smooth but unpredictable, deviating from textbook patterns. The crew communicated with a mixture of formal protocols and improvisational shorthand. They adapted their trajectories mid-maneuver. They joked between commands. By hour 8, the results showed a perfect draw. Gornath's jaw tightened. Begin rest cycle. His crew retired to their quarters, small, identical, utilitarian. They lay on regulation beds, staring at standardized ceilings. The silence was suffocating, but prescribed. When Gornath checked the Defiant's internal feeds, he nearly choked. The humans were having a communal dinner. Warm lighting, long tables, bowls of steaming food passed hand to hand. Laughter echoed through the mess hall. Some crew members watched a movie, others tended the plants in the greenhouse. One group sat in a circle, discussing strategies with animated gestures. "They are wasting time," Gornath spat. "Rest is for energy conservation, not this." But the next morning, the metrics told a different story. Day 2's initial scans showed a 2 to 3% drop in the Imperial crew's reaction times. Perfectly normal under extended operations, but noticeable. The human crew showed no drop at all. The simulation resumed. The Imperial Fist's movements remained elegant and precise, but cracks began to appear. A mistimed thruster burn, a missed micro-adjustment, a sensor crewman who needed a second command repetition. Small mistakes, individually insignificant, cumulatively dangerous. The Defiant surged with renewed vigor. Its crew, energized by rest, companionship, and something Gornath couldn't quantify, maintained their performance effortlessly. Their improvisation became bolder, their solutions more creative. They moved as though the ship itself breathed with them. By the end of day 2, the humans had gained a measurable scoring advantage. Gornath stared at the results in disbelief. "Unacceptable," he snarled. "We will push harder tomorrow. Double efficiency protocols, minimal downtime." His officers obeyed without protest, though exhaustion clung to their faces like shadows. Gornath monitored the Defiant's rest cycle again. He expected laziness. Instead, he witnessed something disarming. The human crew sat in their greenhouse under warm light, trimming leaves, watering roots, inhaling the scent of growing things. Another group gathered in the library, an actual library, reading books, sharing passages aloud. On the observation deck, several crew members sat silently, watching the stars through a towering curved window. They looked peaceful. They looked at home. Gornath turned away before the feeling in his chest became something he didn't want to name. Day 3 broke over the simulation range like a storm. This final scenario was the most demanding. Multiple simultaneous hazards, shifting battle conditions, rapid-fire decision-making, and simulated system failures meant to push crew endurance to the limit. The Imperial Fist launched flawlessly, but its crew did not. 12 hours of peak stress, 2 days of accumulated fatigue, and the crushing pressure of Gornath's expectations weighed on every officer. Their response times dipped to 15% below optimal. Errors increased. Several divisions required repeated commands. Yet even in decline, the Imperial crew fought with rigid determination. "Maintain formation," Gornath shouted. "Protocol Omega-7. Adaptation is unnecessary. We have perfection." But perfection could not save them. A simulated power grid collapse required creative rerouting. The Imperial Fist followed doctrinal procedure: slow, predictable, vulnerable. The Defiant bypassed the entire failure in a matter of seconds with an unconventional, borderline reckless maneuver that would have been forbidden on an Imperial ship. It worked flawlessly. A sudden sensor blackout required rapid improvisation. The Imperial crew fell back on rigid formations. The Defiant switched to manual targeting with the fluid coordination of a professional dance troupe. When a simulated hull rupture forced both ships into emergency containment, the Fist executed its textbook commands. The Defiant executed something else entirely: collaboration. Crew members across unrelated divisions shouted suggestions, generated solutions, and patched the breach in half the time. By noon, the outcome was inevitable. By evening, the simulation ended. The Defiant had won, decisively. Gornath sat in silence as the final scores flashed across his command screen. He had trained for centuries under the Imperium's rigid system. He had optimized every maneuver, perfected every doctrine, sculpted himself into an unbreakable soldier. Yet he had been defeated by a crew who laughed, dined together, tended plants, and watched movies between battles. A message arrived from Commander Marcus Webb of the Defiant. "Good exercise, Fleet Master. Your crew fought with honor. We would be delighted to host you for dinner aboard the Defiant." Protocol required him to accept. Gornath boarded the Defiant, prepared for humiliation. What he found instead broke him open. The corridors were wide, warm, lined with soft lighting and artwork created by the crew. Plants sprouted from planters along the walls. Music drifted through the air, gentle, uplifting. Humans and aliens of several allied species walked past him with easy confidence, smiling politely, genuinely. When he entered the mess hall, he froze. It was enormous, filled with wooden tables, real food, fresh vegetables grown in the greenhouse, bread baked that morning. Crew members laughed, shared stories, passed dishes across the tables without hierarchy or fear. Commander Webb greeted him with a firm handshake. "Welcome aboard, Fleet Master. Please, eat with us." Gornath sat stiffly at first, overwhelmed by sensations. Warm air, vibrant conversation, the aroma of herbs in fresh bread. Slowly his posture softened. The food tasted better than anything he had eaten in decades. The laughter soothed something inside him he didn't know was wounded. He finally asked the question he'd clung to for days. "How did you win? My ship is stronger. My systems are more efficient. My crew is better trained. How did you win?" Webb considered him with a gentle, almost compassionate expression. "Because your crew is exhausted," he said, "and mine isn't. They worked hard, but they also lived. They relaxed. They ate together. They slept deeply because they felt at home. You built a machine that operates at its peak for hours. We built a community that can endure for days." He nodded toward the bustling mess hall. "That's the difference." Webb's words struck Gornath harder than any weapon. The Imperium had built machines of war. Humanity had built homes that could fight. And in the endless darkness between stars, It was the homes that won. When Gornath returned to the Imperial Fist, he walked through its cold corridors with new eyes. Every identical room felt like a coffin. Every sterile wall felt like a gravestone. He sat in his empty quarters and wrote the hardest report of his life. We have 5 years after humanity's first contact with the Galactic Imperium, the stars themselves seemed changed. Not in their orbits, not in their light, but in the way civilizations traveled among them. Where once the void had echoed with sterile machines, now fleets drifted like living constellations, each vessel radiating the individuality of the crew within. The shift was subtle at first. A viewing lounge added here, a communal hall expanded there. But like gravity, change accumulates, and over time it reshapes everything. The Imperium's shipyards, once paragons of uniformity, now hummed with unfamiliar energy. Engineers debated matters they had never discussed before, not thrust vector efficiency or symmetrical stress ratios, but concepts like natural light exposure, optimal rest cycle architecture, and emotional anchor points for personnel resilience. Words such as comfort, morale, and community, once seen as soft, indulgent, even dangerous, had entered official doctrine. The pilot program had begun with 3 vessels. 3 test ships retrofitted with human-style amenities, gardens, expanded living quarters, small recreation areas. Within 6 months, the results were undeniable. Crew performance increased by 20%, stress levels dropped, problem-solving creativity rose, crew retention spiked dramatically. Most shockingly, personnel requested transfers to the modified vessels. For a fleet that had never considered the human element beyond minimum survival thresholds, this was nothing short of revolutionary. The High Command approved more retrofits. New ships were built with these principles in mind, and as doctrine evolved, so did culture. Officers who once lectured on rigid efficiency began studying human psychology. Leadership courses introduced lessons on empathy and social cohesion. Meditation rooms appeared on ships. Observation decks became standard. Dining halls expanded to encourage conversation instead of rushed consumption. Even wall colors changed, from sterile white to warm, natural tones. Vorath, the engineer who once dismissed human design as inefficient, became one of its fiercest champions. His blueprint for the Unity-class cruiser was hailed as the most innovative design in 50,000 years. Its layout flowed like a living organism, integrating gardens irrigated through recycled vapor systems, recreation wings, art alcoves, and private quarters customizable by crew. This ship, Vorath said at the unveiling ceremony, is not just a weapon. It is a community. A crew that lives well will fight well. Other civilizations followed suit. The Krellian Empire, embarrassed by their defeat at the Grand Exhibition, studied human design obsessively. Their rigid warships began sporting panoramic lounges and modular crew spaces. The Venturi coalition embraced community architecture so thoroughly that some of their new ships resembled floating sanctuaries, harmonious, peaceful, alive. Even the Dranthi Collective, a species infamous for austerity, added small comforts to their vessels: soft lighting, quiet meditation corners, and shared meal spaces. These were tiny changes, but seismic for a culture built upon stoicism. Yet the most dramatic transformation occurred aboard the Imperial Fist. Fleet Master Gornath personally oversaw its renovation. The once harsh mess hall was expanded into a warm, bustling communal space. A greenhouse, Gornath's own idea, filled an entire deck with greenery and fresh oxygen. Crew quarters were enlarged and diversified. Most stunningly, Gornath approved a ship-wide vote on new wall art. The crew chose a soaring phoenix painted across the central corridor, wings outstretched in rebirth, flames dancing into brilliant arcs. Below it, in 6 languages spoken aboard the ship, were the words, "Never too late to change." Old admirals were scandalized. Younger officers were inspired. And when the Imperial Fist's performance metrics rose 18% within the first year, Criticism evaporated like vapor in an engine flare. Humanity watched these changes with a mix of pride and humility. Their ships had not been designed to revolutionize galactic engineering. They had simply carried the culture of a species that had spent millennia navigating darkness with heart, humor, and stubborn resilience. And now, that culture had spread across the stars. When the UNSS Endeavour returned to Imperium space for the formal signing of a mutual learning treaty, the reception was unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. The ceremony was held on the capital world's central concourse, beneath towering crystalline spires that refracted sunlight into cascading colors. Representatives from dozens of civilizations gathered. The atmosphere vibrated with anticipation. Admiral Cretin, once humanity's greatest critic, stepped forward to give the keynote address. 5 years ago, he began, voice echoing across the hall, we met a species we believed primitive. We measured their ships by our metrics and found them lacking. We judged their philosophy as misguided. He paused, looking out over the assembled fleets drifting in orbit, ships of many species, each now bearing touches of individuality and warmth. We were wrong. A soft murmur rippled through the room. The Imperium has existed for 200,000 years. In that time, we perfected machines, but we forgot why we built them. We forgot for whom we built them. He gestured upward at the holographic projection of the Indomitable, a ship once mocked, now revered. Humanity reminded us. They taught us that true efficiency is not mechanical, but personal. A happy crew will outperform a stressed crew, no matter how advanced the ship. We built weapons. Humanity built homes, homes that could fight. He bowed his head toward Admiral Sarah Chen, now promoted for her leadership in interstellar diplomacy. Today, we thank humanity for returning to us something we lost long ago. Chen stepped forward, signing the treaty with quiet pride. Delegations from 20 civilizations added their marks. The atmosphere swelled with celebration, not merely diplomatic triumph, but cultural awakening. Afterward, a reception was held aboard a newly commissioned Imperial vessel, the New Beginning. Xyloth boarded with a sense of awe. He had seen the Unity-class diagrams, but stepping inside was something else entirely. Warm light filled the corridors. Windows opened onto the starfield. A central garden deck stretched beneath a transparent dome, filled with trees swaying gently under artificial breeze. Crew members of several species lounged at tables, eating meals together in a spacious hall that smelled of spices and fresh bread. Art adorned the walls, not standardized murals, but paintings, sculptures, and personal photographs contributed by the crew. This ship feels alive, Chen said beside Xyloth as they walked. He nodded, emotion tightening his voice. We learn from excellent teachers. He paused at a window, gazing at the fleet beyond. Ships from the Imperium, the Krellian Empire, the Venturi Coalition, the Dranthi Collective, and more. Each one different, each one personalized, each one a small universe for the crew who lived within. Xyloth looked at Chen. Did your people consciously design your early ships this way? Chen shook her head, smiling softly. No, it was survival. Our ships were slow, our journeys long. People lived, laughed, cried, and died aboard them. We learned to build communities because the void is too vast to face alone. Her expression became thoughtful, and when we finally built faster ships, we simply kept doing what worked. We never stopped seeing starships as homes. Xyloth absorbed her words in silence. Then he looked back at the ships outside, their lights glowing like constellations of culture, memory, and identity. We built empires, he said quietly. You built homes, and in the end, the homes proved stronger. Chen joined him at the window. Not stronger, she corrected gently, just more complete. You had efficiency. We had community. Now together, we have both. They stood side by side, watching the united fleet prepare for departure. A week later, the combined human Imperial Exploration Armada launched into the unknown. Their mission would last 3 years, pushing beyond the edge of known space. Yet every crew member felt no dread, Only excitement. Because for the first time in galactic history, starships carried more than crews. They carried families, communities, living cultures woven into metal and light. As the ships leapt into faster-than-light travel, gardens swayed gently, mess halls buzzed with life, observation lounges filled with wonder, and friendships blossomed across species. The age of perfect machines was over. The age of living ships had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.